Good afternoon to everyone, and good afternoon from Parma. At least it's afternoon here in Parma, and because I know that the attendance is quite large and from all over the world. And so welcome to all of you to this webinar, to this second round of the webinar, because this morning there was another one dedicated to high-risk plant and how to prepare the dossier. Let me introduce briefly the speakers and myself. I am Ciro Gardi, working as a scientific officer in EFSA in the plant health team, and I will introduce the topic and then describe the section devoted to the list of pests. Then here with me, Maria Belén Marquez Garcia from the European Commission, DG Sante. She will introduce the concept of high-risk plants. Later on, Stefano Preti, working with us in EFSA, will describe the section on commodities. And finally, Roy Potting is the chair of the working group dealing with the high-risk plant, will describe the phytosanitary mitigation measures. Some technical information regarding the webinar. As you realized already, the webinar is in English. The webinar is recorded, and it will be available for you on the EFSA YouTube channel. This will be available in a few days. And some information about the frame, the desktop that you are using right now, the application for attending this webinar. So as you can see from the image in the slide, you have a main frame where you can see actually the slide of the presentation. In the bottom left, you have a smaller frame where you can see the both of us, I hope so. And on the left, on the right, sorry, you have a text box that is dedicated to your question on the topic of this webinar. And so you can eventually start also right now to type a question relevant for the webinar, while the text box that you have at the bottom of your screen, you can digit a question, but only technical questions, so question related to possible problems concerning audio, video, and so on. Very briefly, the structure of the webinar, the outline, include the objective of the webinar that very shortly I will introduce, I will describe. Then Belém will go into detail of the description of what are high-risk plants. And we will then enter in the main part of the webinar that is devoted to the preparation of the dossier. So we will enter into detail and guide you, help you in explaining how the dossier should be prepared. After this approximately 30 minutes webinar, we will have a 20-minute question and answer session where your question, some of them, because we probably have no time to answer all of them, will be answered orally. The other will be answered in a written form. And then we will have the closure of the webinar. So the objective of this webinar is, as I was already telling you, is really to be a support for you, for the applicants, for the third country, on explaining how entering into the practicality, how the dossier should be prepared. So describing each of the three main sections of the dossier. The dossier should be submitted by third country, but a third country, we intend all the countries that are not belonging to the European Union. But for this detail, Maria Belén will enter and explain further. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ciro. So very briefly, before going to the details of the webinar about how to prepare the dossier, I would like to introduce the changes in the plant health regulation that will be applicable from the 14th of December 2019. and that they are a change in the plant import regime of the European Union. The new plant health regulation, Regulation 2016-2031, maintains the open system with certain restrictions and permanent prohibitions of the Directive 2029, but it has also introduced a provisional prohibition pending a risk assessment with the list of high-risk plants. So the list of high-risk plants was published in December last year in Commission Implementing Regulation 2018-2019, and all the plants that are listed in this regulation will be prohibited from the 14th of December 2019, pending a risk assessment. The risk assessment will be carried out by the European Food Safety Authority with the information provided by the third country willing to export to the European Union the plants listed as high-risk plants. Very important, only national plant protection organizations can submit dossiers and not private companies. Once the risk assessment is concluded, the European Commission will take the decision and will proceed to the modification of the list of high-risk plants and the establishment of specific measures based on the risk assessment or to a permanent prohibition. The decision will be made by country and by commodity in a case-by-case basis. So if we move to the content of the list of high-risk plants, it has different categories, and the first category is plants for planting. This category contains 34 genera and 1 species that you can read here below in the slide, and you can also consult the Commission Implementing Regulation 2018-2019. For all these plants, there will be a general ban from all third countries pending the risk assessment. The second category is plants, and it contains only 1 species, Ullucus tuberosus, for which a general ban from third countries will be applicable both for plants for plantings and for the tuber. The third category, it contains 1 genus, Momordica, and the ban is based on an identified pest of concern, Thrips palmi. The fourth category is Gut of Ulmus, and the ban is also based in an identified pest of concern, Saperda tridentata. I will very briefly go now category per category, giving some more details. So for plants for plantings, as I just said before, we have 34 genera and 1 species, but we exclude from the high-risk definition seeds, in vitro material, and naturally or artificially dwarfed woody plants for planting. These are not considered high-risk plants, but the current import requirements will continue applying. The second category, plants of Ullucus tuberosus, will be prohibited pending a complete risk assessment, and their introduction will be no longer permitted from the 14th of December 2019. The third category is fruits, and it contains only 1 genus, fruits of Momordica, originating in countries where Thrips palmi is known to occur. I would like to highlight that the fruits of Momordica that originate in countries where the pest is not present, or in countries that have effective mitigation measures in place against this pest, are not high-risk plants, but in order for the trade to continue after the 14th of December 2019, the pest status or the mitigation measures have to be communicated in advance in writing by the National Plant Protection Organization to the Commission. The case of Ulmus is also a ban in relation with a pest, Saperda tridentata, in the countries that this pest is known to occur, and the Gut of Ulmus that originated in countries where this pest is not present are not considered as a high-risk product. For the trade of Gut of Ulmus to continue after the 14th of December 2019 from countries that do not have this pest, the National Plant Protection Organization should submit the pest status to the Commission in writing, and the trade will continue as today. I would like now to give back the floor to Ciro to continue explaining how the dossier needs to be prepared and submitted.
Thank you very much, Belém, and thank you for this very exhaustive and complete presentation, especially giving also the background, the legislative background that I think is very important also for understanding the meaning of this measure. So now I will move into the description, short description of the procedure. And as you can see in this slide, All the process start with the preparation and submission by the third country of a dossier that should be specific for commodity. The dossier should be submitted to the European Commission in the modality that we will describe later on, and the European Commission will perform an initial completeness check. And then, if the dossier result complete at this first check, they will transmit to EFSA the dossier. EFSA, in turn, will perform a second, more detailed, in-depth completeness check. And again, if information are lacking, we can contact back the applicants and we can request integration of information. In case the dossier is complete, EFSA start the procedure and perform the commodity risk assessment. The commodity risk assessment will be published, and once published is the supporting evidence for the European Commission, that is the risk manager, to take the final decision if maintain the ban of import or if withdraw the ban of import for the given commodity for the given country. Very short description of the structure of the dossier. The dossier, as you probably know, because I imagine that you have already taken the chance to read the technical report, is composed by three main sections. One is on commodity description. The second one is dedicated to the identification of pests associated with the commodity and the description of the relevant one. And the third section is on phytosanitary mitigation measures. One of the cover of the dossier, we indicate that the cover should be this checklist that we provided in the technical report. The checklist is intended as a support for EFSA and for the Commission in order to evaluate the completeness of the dossier, but should be intended also as a support, as a tool for you, for the applicant, in order to verify the completeness of the information that you are collating for preparing the dossier. And now for the description of the commodity section, I will give the floor to my colleague Stefano Preti. Welcome, Stefano, and please, the floor is yours for describing the section on commodity data.
Thank you, Ciro. I'm Stefano. I will explain you the first part in which the dossier is composed, and it's about the commodity data. As already explained by Belen and Ciro, the commodity could refer to different plant materials such as plant for planting, wood material, and fruit. And we will go through the first part. As you see here, there is a printout of a facsimile of the dossier, in which you have to explain the scientific name of the commodity, in which you're gonna identify that in a unique way. You should give common names and synonyms if applicable, and you should go deep to the variety or the cultivar if it's possible from that commodity. As already asked this morning, each dossier should be focused to one commodity, and that commodity should be described in a sufficient and ambiguous way. You should give a taxonomic information about that and some specification depending on the commodity types. In the report is well explained where to find those information and how to provide those information, such as like in the international standard for phytosanitary measures. And anyway, for example, for plant for planting, you have to specify the plant age, the growing material, the growing conditions, if the plant for planting were produced by certified seeds or in certified nursery, and so on. Then you should provide information about the phenology state, the agronomic management, and the area and climate. For that, you should provide a map of the country of interest of your country, and in this map you have to highlight the production areas, and among those production areas, the areas in which the commodity are produced for the export in the third country. If there are, you should provide and describe how you are ensuring the distinction, the division between those areas. And for those areas, you have to provide a climate classification, such as the one provided from Koppen and Geiger, till the subgroup level. In conclusion, for this commodity description part, you should provide a visual description, like a picture of the commodity and its processes of production, like the production, the handling, and the shipping. All in all, you have to fill out this part as well as required from the technical report, because it's the first part and it's important for the commodity risk assessment that will follow. Now I will give back the floor to Ciro, that will explain the pests potentially associated with the commodity in the exporting country and this chapter.
Thank you, Stefano, for the also complete information you provide. And I think it was important that you outlined that it's very relevant to provide description on how the commodity is cultivated. And also the information on climate are very important for us, because can allow the risk assessor, so EFSA, to evaluate if a given pest has a suitable condition to be established also in Europe. So thank you for the presentation. Now, as Stefano said, I will enter in this part that, okay, this part is very, very crucial and critical. I would say that represent one of the core of the commodity risk assessment, because it's related to the pests that can be associated to the commodity species or genus, because you saw that in some cases we have genus in some species in your country. You should start preparing this list that is containing all the potential pests present, and explain also how this list was compiled. You probably read already in the technical report that we ask you to perform a systematic search on all the possible sources of information for preparing this list. You can use all the relevant information. So scientific literature is one, and here, for instance, we indicate some of the classical database of scientific paper, like Easy Web of Science, CABI, and so on, or other databases of scientific literature. But you can use also other sources of information, like Gray literature, or a technical report, or other evidences that are on hold are produced by the National Plant Protection Organization, or the result of surveillance, survey, and so on. So all evidences can be useful for compiling this list. It is essential that you provide evidence on the source of this information. Here, there is a concept that for us is relevant, because among all the pests that you will list in the initial list, sorry for the repetition, we are interested in what are so-called for us actionable pests. So what is an actionable pest? Actionable pests are pests of a regulatory significance that can be associated with the considered commodity. For this specific pest, this relevant pest, phytosanitary mitigation measure may be necessary for ensure the pest freedom status of the import consignments. Example of pests of a regulatory significance can be the quarantine pests that are listed in Annex 1 and 2 of the Directive 29 of 2000. Other pests that are under official control, like given the emergency measure or the measure for derogation, or also pests that are waiting to be classified, for which we are the pest categorization is pending. You know that pest categorization is the process that enable us, the risk assessor, to decide if a pest should be quarantine pest or not. Starting from the list that you have compiled at the beginning, so the list of all pests associated to the species of the genus, the next step is for you to divide this pest in two groups. One group that should be listed in this table that is reported in Appendix D of the technical report at page 15, is the list of pests that are already regulated in EU, in the European Union. You can find this pest in the Annex 1 and 2 of the directive that I already mentioned. You see this is an hyperlink, so you can use this hyperlink later on also to retrieve this directive, but information are provided also in the web page of EFSA and so on. What is important to assess in this table is the status concerning different aspects. For instance, the possible presence of pest-free areas, if the pest is really associated to the commodity, and depending on how the combination of these status are, you can get a pest that is relevant for us, that is an actionable pest, that means that for which phytosanitary mitigation measures are required or not. You can see, for instance, here the example of pest 1. Pest 1 is, there are no pest-free areas. So the cross state for yes, and the absence of cross means no. So pest 1 has no pest-free area, but can be associated to the commodity. And so in this case, the pest is relevant for us. So it's an actionable pest because it can be associated to the commodity. There are no area in your country that are free of the pest. So this is relevant. But pest number 2, for instance, despite it is associated to the commodity, because in the country there are pest-free areas, this means that if the product that are going to be exported are produced in pest-free areas, this pest is not anymore relevant for us. The same thing you have to do for all the other pests. So in a second table, you have to list all the pests that are not regulated in the EU, so all the other pests. And also in this case, you have to verify some condition. You have to verify if the pest is present or not in the European Union. This request, of course, should be verified based on the information you have available. And so for doing so, you can consult some of the specific database like the EPPO, the CABI database, and the information that you can retrieve. In case you cannot provide or you have not access to all this information, of course EFSA will complete this column, let's say. But it's important that you do your best for compiling this based on the information you can retrieve. Then also for this pest, you have to describe if they are associated to the commodity or not, and if there are evidence of impact or not. One short explanation on the meaning of this association with the commodity. Why? Because at the beginning, the list of pests is all the pests that are associated to the plant species or genus, while here we are asking if are associated to the commodity. Just to make an example, I can have a pest that is associated to a species or a genus, Malus, for instance, but maybe a given pest is associated only to the fruit of Malus, to the apple, and is not present in the plant. So in that case, if you are exporting plant of Malus and the given pest is only on the apple, it's not relevant, it's not associated to the commodity. This is an example. Also in this case, what are the conditions to be verified to be a pest of concern, a pest relevant for us, an actionable pest? The pest number 1 is an actionable pest because it's not present in European Union, is associated with the commodity, and there is impact. So this is relevant for us. While pest number 2, for instance, is associated with the commodity, has impact, but is already present in the EU. So we have already here, so not pest of concern. And this is just a few examples on how this table should be used. Based on the cross that you have here in this table and in the previous one, this pest will be summarized in this third table. That is the table that contains all the, let's call actionable pest. So here is a summary of the pests that can be relevant for us and then that may represent a potential risk for the European Union. For this pest that represent, of course, a short list compared to the initial one, we ask you to provide a lot of information, detailed information, unambiguous information. So for each of these pests, We ask you to provide the taxonomic classification, the scientific name, classification at higher taxonomical levels, so not only species, but also genus and family and so on. We ask you to provide the geographical distribution and, if present, if there are pest-free areas. And especially we ask you to provide detailed information on the biology of the pest. Of course, you can retrieve this information on the available sources, the literature, and so on. We ask you to indicate if this pest has other hosts and what are these hosts, and also which part of the plant, in which part of the plant this pest can be found, and what are the main damages that can cause. If present, if you are aware of pest risk assessment carried out by your country, but also by other countries, by EPO, by other institutions, please mention this pest risk assessment. Maybe we are not aware of this. And of course, list the references that you use supporting the description of these pests. Now, for the section on phytosanitary mitigation measure, I will invite here our working group chair, Roel Potting. Welcome, Roel, and thank you for taking the lead of this challenging section. So the floor is yours for describing the phytosanitary mitigation measure.
Okay, thank you, Ciro. So I will deal with the last section of the evaluation of the dossier that's sent in by the applicant. And that deals with the phytosanitary mitigation measures that the country of export applies to the commodity that is produced and exported to the EU. When doing the evaluation of the phytosanitary measures, EFSA will do that evaluation for each identified actionable pest, which was explained by Ciro in the section before. So after you have gone through the steps of what Ciro explained, you will have a short list of pests for which phytosanitary measures may be needed. And in the evaluation, EFSA will assess the overall efficacy of all the measures that are applied on your commodity, and then EFSA will assess if pest freedom is achieved based on all the measures you described that are taken on your commodity. So, EFSA expects that you provide technical data on the phytosanitary measures so that we can evaluate the efficacy of the measures you take. So these phytosanitary measures will be natural protection products such as pesticides and any other measure that you take for controlling certain pests. And also you should provide us with information about any certification systems you have for the plants for plantings, any inspections you carry out in the nursery or in the production places, and any sampling and testing you carry out during the production. And also you should provide information on the surveillance system in place. So we would like to know what kind of surveys you carry out in environments of the production places and nurseries. And furthermore, we would like to see information on how you handle the commodity, how you pack the commodity, and what the export procedure is when you send the commodity to the European Union. So first, you should provide us any technical data on the plant protection products you use on the commodity while producing it. And we suggest that you give us all the information that is available on your officially approved label for the particular plant protection product. And on this label usually it is stated what is the active ingredient, what is the application type, what is the application time, and what is the dosage for the treatment. And with this information, then EFSA can assess the efficacy of this particular product for the specified pest that you specify in your dossier. And you can use the table in Appendix E of the technical report for this. Then for all the other measures that you take, so the non-chemical measures, we also would like to know exactly what kind of measures do you take. You have to describe the measure, and you have to provide us with any protocol standard that you use when using these other measures. And for this, you can also use the table provided in Appendix E of the technical report. Oh, I'll go too fast. Then we would like to have information on the surveillance system you have in place in your country. So we would like to know what is the frequency and timing of the surveys you do in the surrounding environment of the nurseries and the production places. And especially if you indicate that you have pest-free areas for certain pests in your country, then we would like to see a specific information on the surveillance system in place for that pest-free area. And then, of course, if you include maps that show where the pest-free area is and where the production places are, that will help us a lot. Okay. Then we expect that you give an overview of all the phytosanitary measures you take while producing the commodity in your country. And this can be done in this example of the calendar. So on the column side, you list all the phytosanitary measures you take. So in this case, 2 insecticides are used, 2 fungicides are applied. Inspections are carried out in March, May, July, and maybe one just before the product is exported in November. Then there is a root treatment carried out in October, and the plants in this example are reported in January. So in this case, we get an overview of all the phytosanitary measures you take while producing the commodity to be exported to the EU. Okay, so then how will EFSA then evaluate the measures that are applied in your country? So we will do that in a concluding table, and in this concluding table, on the first row, you will list all the measures that are applied in your country while producing the commodity to be exported to the EU. So in this case, we have 5 risk-reducing options that are used. And for the first pest, the first 3 risk-reducing options are effective against that pest. So that is indicated by the asterisk. Then the experts of EFSA then will assess what will be the effect of the combination of the measures that are effective for pest 1. Will that guarantee pest freedom of the consignment for pest 1? And in this example, the conclusion is that it's almost certain that the commodity will be pest-free from pest 1, given the fact that these 3 measures are applied in the country of export. Well, we will do that for all the actionable pests which were identified in the previous step. Oh, don't go too fast. So here for pest 2, there are other phytosanitary measures effective. So here it's the phytosanitary measure 3, 4, and 5 are acting on pest 2. And then again, EFSA will assess what's the likelihood that pest freedom is achieved based on the combination of the measures applied for pest 2. And in this example, the rating is extremely likely that a consignment will be pest-free of pest 2. Well, EFSA will do that for all the actionable pests identified. So suppose in this example there are 6 actionable pests identified. And then for each pest, EFSA will do the evaluation for all the measures. So we will assess which measures will be effective against that particular pest. And we will then rate what's the likelihood that pest freedom is achieved based on the measures that are active on that pest. So in this example, you see there is 1 pest, so pest 3, where the conclusion is, well, it's likely that pest freedom is achieved. So here, the experts have some doubts that pest freedom is achieved based on the measures that are described in the dossier. Well, EFSA will not decide if this is good enough, because that's a decision that a risk manager has to take, and that's without the remit of EFSA. And in this case, the risk manager is the European Commission. So the European Commission will decide for which pests additional measures may be required based on the assessment that EFSA does. So this will be the concluding table of EFSA, and then this will be used by the European Commission to reach a decision on whether pest freedom is achieved or not for a particular pest, and if additional measures may be required. So now I give the floor back to Ciro.
Thank you, Roy. Very, very, very well done, and thank you for explaining also this, specifying the different role that EFSA has doing risk assessment and the Commission has taking the final decision, so acting as a risk manager. So close to the conclusion and almost ready to start the question and answer session. Some info on the possibility you have to request for treatment of some information as a confidential. As it is stated in the technical report, you have the possibility, if there are a piece of information, part of the text that you consider critical or to be treated as a confidential, you can indicate this request using the Annex B of the technical report and following the instruction provided. And here some take-home messages, some conclusion. At this point, it should be clear that the dossier represents the tool, the mean that you have and we have for evaluating the risk related to the import of the commodity. So the dossier is the starting point for EFSA for doing the commodity risk assessment. Therefore, it is important that the information contained are correct and are clear and unambiguous. The commodity risk assessment will be published, so all the information, except the one for which you requested confidential treatment, will be published, and the results, so the commodity risk assessment, will enable the European Commission, as we already mentioned several times, to take the final decision, if lift the ban of import or if maintain the ban of import. So this should be clear, this kind of mechanism. How the dossier should be submitted, these indications are already present in the implementing regulation that has been published in December 2018, but here are summarized. So the dossier should be submitted electronically, sending to this email address, and all formats can be accepted, or you have to, and this is the most welcome option. And before concluding, I would like to thank you, other persons that are behind the scenes that help us and contributed to this webinar, because few of us were in front of the webcam, but many other people were behind. And so in the question and answer room, we have thanks to Svetla Kozelska, Maria Rosaria Mannino, and Maria Chiara Rosace. And behind, with the logistic, all the technical aspect, I thank you Francesco Amoretti, Brunilda Ciullai, Andrea Magni, Marella Tassini, Felix Padea, and Francesca Lotito. And then, of course, also our group, our unit, our team, so Nicolaus Kritz, Giuseppe Stancanelli, and all the EFSA plant health team and the Corsair unit for the support provided. Before switching to the question and answer session, we, first of all, we thank you for the attendance. We indicate this functional mailbox that is alpha@efsa.europa.eu, where you can address further question if you have. And we invite you also to, before leaving the platform, to take 5 minutes to fill out the evaluation form of this webinar. You can do, in reality, you can do also in a later stage. Now, I think we can move to the question and answer session. So you have time to submit your question. You have other 15-20 minutes time to submit question, and we will try to answer in the time remaining. Thank you for your attendance, and thank you, Roel, for your contributions. So let's see now. Okay, we start with this interesting question from, I hope to pronounce correctly, from Sladiana, and she, not sure. The question is, can the planned export be realized till December 14, 2019? Sorry. But my view, the question is definitely yes, because the high-risk plants procedure and ban will be start only from the 14th December 2019, as it was indicated in the implementing regulation 2019-2018.
Yes, I think that's correct. So after the December 14th, 2019, and if you haven't submitted your dossier and
Yes.
it's has not been accepted, then there will be a ban on that trade. But before December 2019, no, then trade is still allowed.
Exactly. Yes. But of course, if the intention is to continue to export, is better to prepare and submit the dossier. Otherwise, everything will close at that date.
Yeah.
We have another question from Constanza. She's asking if can the dossier or other evidences be submitted in a language different than English? I would say that the answer is definitely yes, in the sense that the dossier can be submitted using any of the EU official languages, but not other languages that are not officially EU. In this case, if other languages are used, Commission, I think, will translate into English in order to allow easy job for the working group, but definitely the other languages will be accepted.
Yeah, and maybe also labels of plant protection products.
Yes, this is
are very often in the language of the country of export, and that may not be an European language.
This would be tricky for
and
us.
Then it would speed up the process if that information is already translated in a European language. So that will speed up the process.
Definitely, this is a good point, because also this technical information, it will be impossible for us to understand that language, unfortunately. I think we have other questions. Okay, yes, we have a question from Mohamed. Mohamed is asking if the regulation will apply from December 2019, so it is possible for to the third country submit the dossier before this date. The answer is
It's definitely yes. So the dossiers can be submitted anytime, as long as they are complete. Because if a dossier is incomplete, it will delay the process, because we will require more information to finish the evaluation. But yes, so it can be submitted anytime.
Yes, exactly. I would say that theoretically the dossier could be submitted starting from December last year to December 2018, since the implementing regulation has been published. So since then, it was already possible to submit the dossier. Of course, as you mentioned, it is very, very correct that do as early as you want, but not in rush, because doing in rush and not a high quality dossier then will delay all the process, because if we have to contact back because of information are lacking, then this will be even worse than waiting 1 or 2 months or 3 months and send a well-prepared dossier. So this, I think, is We have another question from Lee, if I pronounce correctly. And Lee is asking, what is the foreseen time frame for commodity risk assessment after the submission of the dossier?
Mhm.
You try.
Okay, then maybe you could answer
Okay,
on behalf of EFSA.
On behalf of EFSA, of course, we didn't start the procedure yet. It's something also new for us, but the commodity risk assessment. And we cannot specify at the moment a specific time frame. However, it is important that EFSA will do everything is possible and for having not delay and speed the process, but of course carrying out an appropriate risk assessment. So the time frame will depend again very much also on the quality of the information provided, and so the better the information are, the best will be the time frame in which we deliver the risk assessment. I think it depends also on the complexity, because I imagine that we can have some commodity species or genus where we have few actionable pests, and maybe maybe for this pest there are already available information, maybe also pest risk assessment. While for other cases, probably more complex, having more actionable pests, with little information, then in this case can be longer. So there will be a variability, but I would ensure the applicants that we will do, of course, our best, and this is in the interest also of the Commission. And so no precise answer to this question, but this is what we will do. And here another information from Oliviero. He is asking where the high-risk plant list can be found. And here I think we can move to the slide where the list was provided. Of course, you can get this list in the implementing. It was okay here.
One, yeah.
So here in the slide is the list of the 34 genera and 1 species of plant for planting, and you can, as indicated in the slide, you can find this list in the implementing regulation 2019-2018. So 2019 is the number, 2018 is the year of publication. Yeah. So in the implementing regulation that is on the website of the European Commission, you can find, but the list essentially is here for plants for planting, and only 1 species of plants, that is Leucotuberosus, 1 genus of fruit, that is Momordica, and 1 genus of wood, that is Ulmus, with all the specification that Belém already specified. So let's see if we have some other question. Yes, we have another question from Luis. Luisa is asking regarding the country that exports several products and varieties. Is it possible to submit a joint dossier, or it is necessary to fill different dossiers per product? I think this question is similar to the one that we already answered this morning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So I think you can do both. You can submit a dossier for each commodity type that you want to export to the EU, or you put them all together in one dossier. But it's very important that you describe the different commodities that are exported to the EU, because the pests that are associated to a particular commodity can differ, and that should be described very well in the dossier that is submitted to the European Commission.
Exactly. So
as long as you describe the commodity types very well, and you describe what are the differences in the pests associated with it, those commodity types, You can do it in two separate dossiers or in the same dossier, but
Yes.
as long as we have the information to do the evaluation for each commodity type, then it's okay with
It's
us.
fine also for us. Yes, I agree. So I think is. Let me see if we have other question. I cannot see other question.
But the team is still busy with answering questions.
Yes.
So
I would say that if you have still time to submit question, but we will close in 2 minutes. We will close this broadcast session, but you have additional 10 minutes to submit question using the platform, and all the question will be answered in written, if not directly orally. So take your time for sending question, and in worst case, if you have popping up question even in a later stage, you have the functional email address, and you can submit question also using this channel. So let's see if other are writing other. I think this is a big novelty also for us, for the Commission. Is something that relevant also for preventing some impact, but is something that will be, as usual, carried out in the very transparent and scientifically sound manner. So there is no fear for the third country, because of course all the measures could be eventually taken only if substantiated by real risk. So this, I think, is important.
yes, I agree.
Yeah, the Commission has the capacity to do so. So we will do our best on, let's say, on scientific side, and then the decision will be, of course, on. So I think we conclude, and we thank you again for your participation, your worldwide participation, because we saw from the attendance list, the registration list, that several countries from all over the world attended this webinar. And so again, thank you to all of you for your time, and we wait for receiving your dossier. Thank you, Roel, for your contribution.
Thank you.